morning on this cold day, come in and warm up with the warm energy. I checked my notes last night and I noticed it was an hour long, but bear with me. Not really. Just look on your faces. Well, quite often when a guest speaker is up here, they choose to talk about judging and discriminating, and we're all guilty of it. We need to be reminded frequently, but there's so many different ways to talk about it and how wrong it is, and it can even be immoral in some cases. But this morning I wanted to talk about it in a different sense, and that is, instead of judging, to try to walk a mile in their shoes. So that's my topic this morning, is about walking a mile in someone else's shoes, and not just imagining what they're going through, but to actually put yourself in their shoes. And as spiritualists, we can do that. And then we can fully understand what they're going through and be there for them and be their friend. Usually when someone judges another person, like they call them names or they put them down, it's to try to make themselves look better, but it usually backfires. They seek out someone who's less fortunate or having a difficult time and proceed to verbally put them down in the hopes it makes them look better. But I think it would look better if we were there for them and became friends. Now, bullying, which has gotten really out of hand, and last week was the end of anti-bullying week, but I think it should be 52 weeks a year, not just the one. But it's quite similar where they seek out somebody who's having a difficult time or someone that's different, and they proceed to not just verbally attack them, but also emotionally and sometimes physically attack them. And they feel empowered by making the person feel worse or even weakened, as if they're rewarding themselves for their achievement, even though it's a negative one. So instead of the bully should walk a mile in their shoes and see if they could be of assistance or, just be there for them and help them out. And that will be a positive reaction. But they choose to bully the person, to make life more difficult for them and sometimes destroy them because more are committing suicide. But we also need to walk a mile in the bully's shoes to see what's making them click. You think back many years ago, like even in my mother's time, and she's coming 87, so that was quite a few years ago when she was in school. Most of the students would just ignore you. The school board had her skip a few grades, so it wasn't her doing. So she was 12 when she started high school, and the 14, 15-year-olds don't want to hang out with a 12-year-old, so she was ignored. She wasn't really teased or bullied, but she didn't have any friends. So for the next generation, which would be my generation, when I went to school, you were picked on. So just to briefly walk a mile in my shoes, I'll go back to when my parents first married. My dad had just finished in the Air Force, so he was in university and working part-time in a hotel, and my mother worked in a bank. But in those days, when a woman became pregnant, she had to quit work before she started the show. So when my mother got herself pregnant, so my dad says, she had to quit university and work full-time in the hotel, and she had to quit her job. And then more children started coming. So they didn't have much, but my dad managed to save money, and he wanted his children to have a better education, so he saved up to buy a little house out in was considered a sort of upper middle class area where the schools were better. He wanted his children to have a better education in a better school. So we had a roof over our head, we had food on the table, but we didn't have the in clothes, but we had clothes. Most of the students' dads at that school, their dads were like engineers and accountants and doctors and lawyers and that, so they could afford the in things. So when my twin sister and I went to school, we got picked on because we didn't wear the in clothes. We got picked on because we did our homework. We got picked on because we were shy and quiet, but in those times, if you had a quick comeback, they would usually leave you alone. So I would tell them, I'm not shy, I'm a good listener. You learn more that way, so therefore I'm smarter than you are. And then that would do it. They would leave me alone. But nowadays, if you were to say something like that, you'd end up going home with some of your teeth missing, with your ribs all bruised from being kicked down and videotaped to go viral on YouTube. So what's happened with today's children? And I don't mean just high school, or grade school, even kindergarten. Some kindergarten kids are bullying each other. And then the next generation, and even a few years back during school, my niece, who's 28 now, was bullied at school because she has mental health issues. Not mentally challenged, she was an honor student all through school. But people knew she was different. And she was a little overweight at the time. So she was bullied. Instead of walking a mile in her shoes and getting to know her and be there for her and be a friend, they chose to bully her. And one student told her to go home and hang herself because no one will miss her. And most students would tell you where to go, but in her case, because of her mental health issue, she took it to heart. And she did try a few times. Unfortunately, she didn't succeed. My daughter, who is a couple years younger, she made friends with the ones that were being bullied. Being a sensitive kind of girl, she would make friends with them. She'd walk a mile in their shoes. And a number of them came from broken homes, abusive homes, one or both parents drinking or doing drugs. So quite often they'd come and stay with us. And I was called mom by a number of students. So in her case, she ended up, she was fortunate. She made a lot of friends, but it was unfortunate for the reason why. And now that they're in their mid to late 20s, they still keep in touch. They're all still friends. Some of them have very successful careers. And some have said it's because she was there for them. She walked a mile in their shoes. So what's happened with today's children? Why has bullying become so common, so popular? Why is it cool to be cruel? Because you know, when a new baby is born, everybody loves a new baby. The parents, family, friends, even strangers. The baby is surrounded with love. So when, how, why? Why did some of that love get replaced with so much hate and anger? So if you put two little babies in a playpen together to play, two different babies with some toys, they get along. Even though they're not talking yet, you know they're not thinking, well, I don't want to play with you because your skin's a different color than mine. I don't want to play with you because your religious beliefs are different than mine. And you're not wearing the in diaper, and you're they'll even share each other's pacifiers. So all that, the judging, the hate, discriminating, and all the anger, they're not born with it. It's learned. They are fully capable of learning it, and they do. And you wonder, where do they get it from? Well, sometimes the parents, even though they love their children unconditionally, they may be unaware that they are exposing the children to that. They get it in school, in the playground. They get it on media, TV, movies, books, even computer games. They have computer games where the children score points for destroying something. And that something is usually living, even if it's made up. It could be a monster or something, but it's living. And they get points for destroying it, for blowing it up. Computer game companies know not to create a game where a child would score points for hugging someone, giving them a helping hand, being there for them. Like, they know it wouldn't sell. What child would want to play that game? Maybe one that has learned to walk a mile in someone's shoes? Just recently, it was in the news about a boy that was suspended from school for kissing a girl. Now this was a little 5-year-old kindergarten boy who probably sees his parents kiss. They kiss him, and he knows it means caring, love, and affection. So he got punished for showing affection to another little student, a little girl. Or maybe he didn't know he should have asked first, but at least he was showing affection and not bullying her. So it probably scarred for life. So to understand one another, we need to walk in each other's shoes, walk a mile in each other's shoes. And back in October of 1959, one such man did, John Howard Griffith. He wrote a book about his experience, and it was called Black Like Me. I remember this is back in 1959 when racism was extremely high. But he had his, medically had his skin color changed to appear like a black man. Because he wanted to understand what they were going through, what their life experience was like. So he wrote about the good, the bad, and the ugly experiences he had as a Negro. And he had met some that treated him with courtesy and generosity, even though they were strangers. But he was also denied the basics of life: food, water, rest, shelter, even a toilet. And he did meet up with some sensible and sensitive white people that tried to help him, pull him through his moments of agony. But when he eventually returned back home as a white man, he could now see more clearly how barbaric racism was. And he had to move out of his area so his family would have peace and security. He wrote in his book, he describes the theme of white racism as the story of men who destroy the souls and bodies of other men, and in the process destroy themselves. In other words, racism cruelly and completely corrupts the heart, body, and intelligence not only of the blacks, the oppressed, but it dehumanizes and brutalizes even the whites, their oppressors. So this can be said for any form of judging, discriminating, bullying, just plain and purposely choosing not to get along. There was another book just recently released, it was mentioned in the Star, The Cross in the Closet. Timothy Curate tells of his experience in life after spending a year pretending to be gay. Now, he told his family and friends he was gay. He didn't tell them he was pretending. He wanted it to be realistic, so he told them he was coming out of the closet. His mom said she'd rather hear that she had cancer than hear that her son was gay. Now, originally he did this to help him understand his friend, who was just recently disowned by her family after she came out. He wanted to understand her so he could get her to repent for her sin, because his religion had taught him that it was a sin. But after a year of his experience, he realized the voices he heard in his head were not God's, but religious propaganda. Most of his friends stopped talking to him. Some told him that Jesus doesn't love him anymore. He called them those names. But after the year had ended, he had completely transformed. He went from being a very narrow-minded, hyper-conservative Christian to an ally of the gay community. And it not only changed him, but it changed his family and his friends. His mother said she understood why he undertook this project, saying that sometimes you need to walk a mile in someone else's shoes to understand them. So she too is now an avid supporter of the gay rights. So the whole family did a complete turnaround and realized, as it said in the article, it's God's job to judge and my job to love. So now we have all this advanced technology, computers, bigger, better, faster, everything new and improved, but not with mankind. Why is it we still can't be friends? Why can't we get along? Would that not be bigger, better, and new and improved for mankind? And remember the movie Shallow Hal? Where the young fellow had fell head over heels in love with this woman that he thought was beautiful. In his eyes, she was gorgeous. He felt so lucky he had the most beautiful woman in the world. But his guy friends could only see a very large and, in their eyes, ugly woman. Not one they'd choose for themselves, so they tried to get him to dump her, even though he really loved her and thought she was beautiful. So who was right? Was she beautiful or not? Of course she was, because in God's eyes, we are all beautiful. So to sum it up, instead of discriminating or judging, we should just walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Be there for them. Be a friend. And the whole world would be full of new and improved mankind. And just think of all the friends you'd have. So I'm going to end this with a short little saying that goes, don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. And don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend. And thank you, friends. Thank you.